Hello everyone, my name is Janina and today I'm bringing you my September wrap-up. So I will be talking about all the books that I've read in the month of September and share my thoughts and what rating I gave the books, and yeah, just telling you what I liked and what I disliked, and yeah, let's just get started, I guess. So the first book I read in the month of September was Adult Rights by Octavia E. Butler, which is the second book in the Xenogenesis series. I guess that's how you pronounce it. It follows the characters of the first book, but the main character of the first book, she had a child in the second book, and you mainly follow that child in the second book and his adventures and how he comes to terms with the fact that he is not entirely human and how other people view him as a not entirely human being. We follow him and how he gets older and how he changes, how his way of thinking changes, and just in general how his relationship with different people, humans or aliens, progresses. So I liked the book, but I only gave it 3 stars because the first part I really liked because it was very dramatic, it was very adventurous. But the second part was more, it was a bit more slow. There was a lot of talk about the relationships between the aliens and what their skills are and just what their interactions are and everything, and it was a little bit exhausting to read to me sometimes. It's still very fascinating and very interesting, but it's very long-winded, and sometimes I felt like, okay, I would like there to be something actually happening in the story, even though it's still important to know what they're saying. But yeah, for me, I like fast-paced books, and the second part of it wasn't really fast-paced. But I'm still looking very much forward to the third and last book of the series. Just a little information for you, there's a trigger warning for child abuse because there's some violence happening towards a toddler slash a infant, so please keep that in mind if you're actually going to pick up this book. The second book I read in September was The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, and sadly I did not like it as much as many other people did. I was mainly very bored by it, and I thought that there was not a lot that was actually happening in the book. And I know that many people like the atmosphere and the characters and the magical element to it, and I also liked the magical element to it and just the idea of the circus in general. But there was just too many things that I did not care for. I didn't care for the characters, I didn't care for the romance. I think Marco, was that his name, was a terrible character, and how he treated the girls in his life was just not something that I enjoyed reading. Also, I felt that it was unnecessarily confusing at times, and I had a little problem with the skipping in between the times, because I'm not really a big fan of that in books if they skip in between years, because I think it disrupts the flow of the book in a way, so I was not a big fan of that, sadly. Also, like I said, I really didn't care for the characters. I wasn't very fond of the main characters and just how their relationships were portrayed. I just didn't care, basically. So I gave that 2 out of 5 stars, and sometimes I feel really bad when I give low ratings to really popular books because so many people like The Night Circus and I didn't. You know, it's all a matter of taste, so I guess it's fine. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of really slow books. I like fast-paced books where something is always happening, and I felt there was nothing happening at all in The Night Circus, so the third book that I read was Peter Darling by Austin Chant, and oh my god, I loved this book. It was so well written. It was super fast paced and everything was very well thought through, and just the story in itself was spun so nicely. I read it in 2 days. It's very short. It only has around 200 pages or something, but I loved it. If you don't know anything about it, it's a retelling of Peter Pan, where Peter Pan is a trans man and he comes back to Neverland and sees that a lot of things change, and the people with whom he had friendships before changed, and just basically everything in Neverland changed, and he cannot adapt well to that situation. Also, he has to deal with what he starts to feel towards Hook. It's a very nice progression of the romance, which I liked a lot. I also think that the part where Peter Pan is a trans man was very well built into the story and how the author brought it all together. And I will read more books of Austin Chant in the future for sure. I gave it 4.5 stars out of 5. The next book that I read is a little bit problematic. It's called All the Ugly and Wonderful Things by Brian Greenwood. And before I start telling you about this book, there's a trigger warning for child abuse, for drug abuse, for violence and sexual acts with a minor. So if it's hard for you to deal with that, just skip this book altogether, because there's a lot of that in this book and I had a lot of problems with it. I don't really know where to begin to describe this book, but okay, so it deals with a little girl called Wavy. At the beginning of the book, she is 8 years old and basically her whole family is just very twisted. Her mother is a drug addict and her father as well. He also makes a living from selling drugs. She has a little brother who's only 2 years old and basically she has to take care of her brother. She has to be very adult-like for her age, which is very hard to read sometimes because she deals... Oh, there's also a trigger warning for eating disorder. Just, I forgot to say that. So we have that little girl and she has to deal with all these family problems. She gets sent to different foster homes at the beginning. For a while, she stays at her aunt's house, but that's also very problematic because her aunt can't deal with how she acts in the house and how she runs away in the night and stuff like that. In the end, she actually goes back to her own mother and her own family and stays there for a while, but things are not good at all at her home and she meets a guy called Callan. They start to have a very positive relationship, not in a romantic way, but just in a he takes care of her way. She picks her up from school, she brings her to school, she watches out for her that her father does not hurt her or her mother doesn't hurt her and stuff like that. So it's more of a he's taking care of her role, but throughout the book he falls in love with her and she falls in love with him, and that's where the problems start because she is only 12 and that's very problematic because I mean, do I have to say more than that she is 12 and he is around 22? So, that's why I actually did not give this book a rating, because I did enjoy some parts of it, like how she deals with some parts in the family and how she gets older and how Wavy actually changes and gets better. And she makes like good life decisions. So even though she was abused a lot while being a child, she still manages to get into really good university and manages her life and keeps on living, which is amazing, even though she went through so much. I didn't give this book a rating because I just don't know how, and I really questioned myself, why did I pick up this book? Why did I actually read it? I don't know. And it's very, very dark, it's very, very dramatic and very twisted, and I don't think it's a book for just everyone because it has so many problematic aspects to it and so many trigger warnings too. It's very, very heavy sometimes, and at that time I actually wanted to read something like that. I wanted to read something dark and heavy. I'm just gonna leave it like that and say that some parts I enjoyed actually, but man, there's a lot of problems in this book. Let's just say that. The last book I read was another of my bad gay romance novels. And you may ask, why, Janina? Why did you start another one? Why did you pick up another one? Didn't you tell us that you wouldn't pick up another one? And yes, that is very true, but I just wanted to read something really light and very fun and very generic. After that very dark book that I read before, I picked up Wolf's Scent by Isabel Dave. And oh man, let me tell you, it was not good. Like I said, very generic. It's just a simple werewolf book again, where a guy lives in the woods somewhere in his cabin because he's like a werewolf and he wants to, stop having contact with all humans because he's dangerous and, But one day he meets a guy in the woods who ran into a bear trap, and he rescues that guy and brings him to his cabin and he takes care of him, and his inner wolf is like, this is my mate, I think I might love him. And that other guy is too, oh my god, I think I love him. And it just progresses from there, and it's very simple and not very deep at all, but it wasn't the most terrible book I've ever read, to be honest. And it actually ends on a cliffhanger, which is really mean because it wasn't great, but I still kind of want to know what happens next, so I might pick up the second book, even though this one wasn't very good at all. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars, and we will see if I may pick up the second book in the series in October, because it's actually a series with 5 books or something. So I don't know what I got myself into this time, but meh. Let's see, right? So yes, these are all the books that I read this month. I read 5 books, which is actually still pretty good for me, because normally I read 3 to 4 books in a month. I don't know how it's going to be next month, because I will be very, very busy in October, but we will see. Wish me luck. So yeah, that's everything. I hope you're having a great day, and I hope you're all doing well, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye!